advertise. You never know who's watching.
College graduates are finding it increasingly difficult to find a job. Others are finding themselves underemployed. Hello, I'm Dr. David Kopp in the David Brinkley studios at Barry University, and this is Community Crossroads. The individual stories are familiar. The biology major tending bar, the photography major sweeping floors at a department store. Employment rates for new college graduates have fallen sharply. For some insight on the problem and perhaps a solution, I'd like you to meet my panel today. Joining us to my right is Ms. Shawnee Hall, who is the Associate Director of Career Services for Barry University. Then there's Laurie Turner, who's a career counselor for the Jewish Community Services. And last but not least is Ryan Morales, who is recently graduated from biology and is currently unemployed. I'd like to welcome the panel. Shawnee, let me start with you and ask, what strategies are you recommending to job seekers nowadays, especially in this recession?
Everyone that you speak to essentially are getting jobs from someone who knows someone who knows someone that knows someone that knows someone. It's no longer the situation where you can job search safely behind a computer screen or look online or apply to newspapers. You really have to know someone and get out there and network. So we're encouraging students these days to use that to their advantage, use their classmates to their advantage, their parents, someone they may know, their neighbors, anyone in their field that they're interested in, and start networking to getting more contacts within the specific fields they like to get into.
And have you seen an impact, especially in the last couple of years? You hear anecdotes, but are you finding it more difficult to place students?
Definitely. It depends. It really depends on the major. When we tell students to go network and they actually find a contact, especially through LinkedIn within someone within the field, especially if they go after alumni, they're very likely to help someone just because they know they're from the university that they went to. When it's cases like that, it's a little bit more helpful. It's not as hard to place.
And Laurie, in that spirit, because I know prior we were talking about LinkedIn a little bit, some of the strategies I would assume include these computer websites. Do you have, besides LinkedIn, or any others you specialize in employment?
We encourage people right now to just employ multiple strategies. In addition to the networking, we think your resume has to be just as good as it can be. We encourage people to create a really good profile to put on LinkedIn. That can be helpful with networking as well. You only have one opportunity to create a first impression, so your resume is a marketing tool. You can't even get an interview without getting the resume past someone, so there's steps to take, and I think using the networking, the alumni network, your friends, your family, informational interviews, people who are in a field that you want to get into that you can call upon to just sit down with you and brainstorm, not necessarily to ask them for a job, but just to give you some guidance. That can be very helpful.
Yeah, and one definitely. Of the aspects I was going to ask Ryan, because we have some advice here. Have you actually been employing the computer, no pun intended on the employee, by the way,
well,
using the computer to search?
Yeah, I've been looking for a lot of work in the hospital field, be it entry-level position or really anywhere I can get my foot in the door. And most of those applications are precisely online, like first apply online, and then if they give you a reply, you come in. But again, like you said, because I don't know anyone in the hospitals, it's hard to actually even get that interview or even a reply.
Are you, and I'll open it up to all of you, are you finding that the recession specifically is impacting, in your case, job seeking, but are you finding, for instance, people that maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the type of demographic you didn't see? For instance, older adult, in your case, older adults versus younger adults?
Definitely. We have had more alumni come in than in the past years. We would have maybe 1 or 2 per semester alumni actually come back and use our resources because their resources are available to them forever and ever. And with that said, within the last 2 years, essentially, we've been having just as many alumni come back asking for help than we do actually have students. So,
what is your projection, Laurie, on the future? Is the worst happen? Are we on a downward slope?
I always tell people I don't have a crystal ball. And as Shani was saying, like, older workers are considered anyone over 40. They're having a hard time. But the recent graduates like Ryan are also competing with people with a little bit more experience, so that's making it especially
And that
difficult.
was my point, actually, because we are talking about recent graduates, but it strikes me that now versus, let's say, 4 or 5 years ago, you're competing with a market that you may have not had to compete with prior.
Absolutely.
And besides online websites, have you been going to job fairs and things like that? Is that a strategy you're using?
Well, I mean, I haven't been necessarily at a jobs fair, but I have looked into attending jobs fair, and a lot of them just haven't been in the direction I've been going to. There was a 20,000 jobs fair thing at Florida Marlins new stadium, and it was all marketing, you know, business, accounting. It had really nothing to do with my particular interests as far as career goals are concerned.
I think job fairs are only as good as the employers who are represented there, so you're smart to find out in advance who's going to be there and decide whether or not it's worthwhile in terms of your time.
but to continue with that, sometimes it's good to start building your network. So even though that person may not be the job that you're interested in, you never know who they may know that might have a connection for you. And if you impress them, and I have a best friend that has a company that does biology research, I might say that I met this very good student that's not a good fit for me, but I think he might be a good fit for you.
That's very true.
And I think you mentioned it, yeah, you'll take the advice. You mentioned earlier a way of distinguishing yourself. Now, I get it's who you know, but what's the recommendation? Because I would assume a lot of these sites especially get a bunch of resumes and CVs. I mean, do you have some tips and techniques, and I'll open it up to both of you, as far as how an applicant can distinguish him or herself?
Of course, students forget that, you know, they're graduating from classes with 500, 600, sometimes 1,000 other students with the same degree. So what is going to make you stand out from everyone else who's getting your exact same degree? So it's not just about going there and enduring the 4 years and getting the piece of paper at the end, but what did you do differently from the person sitting next to you? It's not even just getting an internship these days, it's how many internships and for what companies, because for some degrees, internships are required for everyone. So not only you having a degree that matches everyone else, you're having that one internship experience. So it's getting various different ones, and then what else did you do outside of the classroom? Were you involved? Did you volunteer? Community service? What made you and your story different from everyone else?
May I ask you, have you noticed that more internships are paid internships or non-paid internships?
They really vary per company.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think right now you have to expect that you have to be willing to accept an unpaid one, and that might be a really good way to get your foot in the door at a hospital, for example, is to volunteer. You know, how else can someone see your work?
Right.
So while you're conducting your job search, you might want to dedicate X number of hours a week to an unpaid internship or volunteer work, call it whichever you want.
That's always been, irrespective of the current recession, it's always been a catch-22 like that. You know, they want experience, but how can I get experience if no one wants to try me out? So that strikes me as something that's always out there. Laurie, what else, what other tips perhaps that Shawnee didn't cover that maybe you're suggesting to your applicants?
As I said, I think you have to show your flexibility, your willingness to volunteer, and be strategic about it. Find an employer that you'd like to work for, and then find out how to go about perhaps interning, volunteering, or whatever.
If I may interject, even volunteering when it comes to like biology, medical field, that's pretty tough too. I've tried volunteering at different clinics in the greater Miami area, and you know, no reply, gone in, tried to get interviews. But thankfully, actually, there's good news because I might have a volunteer opportunity coming up in the Jackson Memorial System in Jackson South within the next month. So.
And perhaps that's some, you know, if you go to your Career Services Center,
Hi.
You can request, you know, are there some alum I could speak to in the healthcare industry? Like, you know, if you make a specific request, it might be easier for them to generate a list of some people, you know, for you to get in touch with or for them to contact on your behalf.
Do you think that maybe there's an issue with the communication of these available, or these sources of availabilities to the students? Because, I mean, of course, everyone understands there must be a career, you know, you guys, there are career counselors, but how effective they are or how available they are. Like, it's news to me that it's available to all alumni, your career counseling thing. So, you know, do you guys think that there might be some kind of lack of communication in that sense, that the help is available?
They would probably take the position no. They're doing a great job, Ryan. But I see your point. One of the aspects, and I think we dealt with this on the tease, is that I guess as a strategy, someone's going to have to take a job that perhaps they wouldn't initially take a couple years back, but to kind of pay their dues, they may have to take something less than entry level, let's say. And it strikes me because although it's been a long time, I remember being a college graduate and having kind of this ideal situation. I won't, you know, do this or not. You don't really have that luxury anymore, do you? So I mean, is that some of the advice that you're giving, that you may have to set your sights a little lower, at least temporarily?
I sometimes tell people they might need to find a survival job while they're looking for that dream job. Because if you need to start paying back your student loans or pay your bills, you might have to, you know, just find the survival job and continue your search. I heard someone say recently that, you know, if someone wants to obtain a federal position, it might take them 2 years. Well, in those 2 years, if you have your sights set on working for the federal government, you've got to be doing something else. So, but if you're going to do the survival job and go for that, you might want to try to get it within the setting that might help you somewhere down the line. So,
to Ryan's point, how in your not only your field but in your specific Jewish community services, how do you advertise your services?
We're a very large social service agency with a variety of programs. So some of the programs are grant funded, so they serve a specific population. Our particular program is on we're a privately funded grant, so it's mostly specific for the Jewish community of Miami-Dade County, not for Broward residents.
Right.
People just hear about us from word of mouth. I get clients who refer people who I placed in positions years ago. So a variety of ways.
Variety. I want to continue this discussion. We're going to take a break, but when we get back, we can talk about more strategies for employment versus unemployment. We'll be back.
Arthritis is America's most common cause of disability. Walking just 30 minutes a day can ease joint pain, improve mobility, and stop the progression of the disease. Start moving now to prevent and control arthritis. And let's move together to raise funds for a cure. Join the movement and participate in the arthritis walk in your area. Log on to letsmovetogether.org and start moving.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
Malcolm, you do know that energy savers last 6 times longer than ordinary light bulbs.
This isn't my room. It's Baron Davis's.
Baron Davis, the basketball player? This is his room?
Yep.
Interesting, because we have Baron Davis right here. Baron, do you live here?
No.
I don't mean that, Baron Davis.
Millions of kids are using their energy wisely. What's your excuse?
Did you get a call from the coach about those kids who were caught drinking?
Not our guys. They know better.
Yeah, they know better.
Heads up, sport.
Real kids are curious about alcohol. 40% tried by the 8th grade. Talk early, talk often, get others involved.
Okay, and we're back, and I wanted to continue this theme of strategies and being part of the solution versus the problem. And in that spirit, I wanted to ask, getting back to the resume or the CV, I know it's important. I know it's, you don't get a second chance to make a good first impression, but are there certain new formats that each use may be recommending to really making that something that differentiates as well?
Of course. I like to tell my students that, you know, your resume, if you've watched Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, your resume is like your golden ticket. It is the most important document to help you get a job. And with that said, when employers look at your resume, it's literally 10-15 seconds they're looking at it for to see if, one, it's aesthetically pleasing, meaning it's not big paragraphs that they had to read and layout is fine. But very, very importantly is that they get all the information that they need up front. The worst thing that you can do is say, here's me, this is all the stuff I've done, here employer, you figure out where I fit. But giving them all the information, so essentially using the job description kind of like a cheat sheet to match what they're looking for, so that when they do look at your resume, it's, Ryan has everything that we're looking for. That's one tip that I can suggest. Any other
tips for resumes?
I totally agree, and I also think sometimes cover letters are very important as well, because that's a chance to just sort of highlight something that's in the resume, not be repetitive, but to just, you know, be real specific so no one has to guess what it is you're looking for.
What's the feeling out there regarding unsolicited resumes? I mean, is that in the recession, I guess it's probably even tougher, but I guess you recommend that they specifically respond to an ad or a job fair versus just sending a blind resume?
I mean, with this particular, the way the economy is right now, it's all about the aggressive job search versus the passive job search.
Yeah, that was my point. I mean, does that
so
include...
you can go right ahead and send it.
If I may interject,
Sure.
but you're mentioning the economy, I've always felt that, especially in my field, and this is coming from a lot of my friends who have impeccable resumes and have worked doing research, as I have myself, and worked in different fields in biology, and they still can't find a job. You know, and I think, in my opinion, I feel that it's a bigger problem. I mean, right now, according to 2011 U.S. Census Bureau, we're at 9% unemployment as a country. Independent sources speculate even 15% if you consider non-U.S. residents. The U.S., and these are also numbers that you'll find from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. You know, and I feel it's definitely a much bigger issue, and this is not necessarily specific to the entire, you know, region, but at least in Miami where we live, Forbes magazine stated us the top 3 worst places to look for a job in the U.S.
The top 3 worst? That seems like almost like an oxymoron.
So what Shani's saying is you have to be even more aggressive and more deliberate about your job search.
So I was just wondering if there's a step beyond that. I mean, or is it really just, you know, hit or miss?
No, Laurie brought up an excellent point earlier when she mentioned she snuck it in there, informational interviews. They are an excellent way to get yourself out there and kind of start crossing the aggressive barrier without being too in your face. But asking an employer for an informational interview, for them to tell you about how they got into that position and explain what the field is like, the ins and outs about it. So you've made essentially, yes. So you make a one-on-one connection with them, and then you maintain that relationship, and you send your resume, and you can say if you know anyone that would be interested, and you pursue that way.
These are all incredible ideas.
Well, that's why you're here, Ryan. We're going to get you a job, yeah.
And that may be a good thing to use the Career Resource Center for, because the alum may not have a job to offer, but they may be willing to spend a few minutes with someone who graduated from the same institution they did to just share some details.
This is how I did it.
Or to tell you they have a friend who's got a company and maybe they, you know, would be willing to talk to you. It's just a way of broadening your network, to expand and use other people's networks. So I always say you want to expand your network exponentially.
Exactly.
You know, I know this show is about the challenges of recent graduates. So one of my questions is, recommending more education going into back to school. Is that something that you're asked about or recommend to your prospect, that while you're looking, maybe you need to retrench your skill set going back to school, for instance?
I think it depends on what field you're in. We get some older workers who we sometimes recommend, in order to get some more specific skills or be more competitive in today's market, that they get some sort of short-term certificate. So something that, you know, wouldn't be very costly, that might make them more marketable in a specific field.
For example, like a CPR certification in my field.
Or something in the allied health field that would be, you know, once they do their research and come up with some fields that are doing a lot of hiring, they may then want to get a short-term certificate from a community college.
Right.
That would
EMS, phlebotomy.
Exactly. That was
radiology type of situation. Okay.
But for recent graduates, if they're thinking of just going right into graduate school, I usually think that you need to be a little bit deliberate about what you're going to study next. And if you're just staying in school just because there's no jobs out there, that's probably not a really good use of your time or your money. You're just going to come out with more debt, and you might not necessarily be getting a degree in a field that's going to pay enough money to make it worthwhile to have gone through that graduate program. So I think you have to sort of weigh what field you're thinking of and whether it's going to be worthwhile to get that graduate degree.
You know, as Ryan mentioned, we're in the top 3 worst places to be from an employment standpoint right now. My question is,
in the U.S.
In the U.S. And speaking of the U.S., is a strategy to really consider relocating to other parts of the country? Have you been hearing that type of dialoguing in your meetings?
Definitely. Most of our students are from all over the place anyway, so they start their job search here, and if they don't figure anything out, they do have conversations about going back to their hometown or going to where the jobs are, essentially. And that's, you know, individual basis, how flexible are you and how willing are you to relocate for a job. But conversations are had of that.
Is there, and Laurie, maybe in your setting, are there other support groups that you recommend for others seeking employment? Are there specific, maybe by discipline or by maybe if there's a layoff? Because I know in career services, part of what I remember about is that they help you get your resume built as well as a network out there. But are there specific resources and kind of sharing the misery, so to speak?
I don't know of any support groups per se. We sometimes recommend that people, when we recommend that you do everything possible, the one-stop centers have some organizations within them called the Professional Placement Networks, and sometimes they run resume workshops, or they might have speakers come in, and I've seen where professionals got support from one another, and sometimes that's a really good way to share information. Like maybe someone else in the room has heard of a job opening and they're not interested in it, so they offer it to Ryan. So
yeah, that's what I was talking about. Now, Ryan, have you actually been to one of those types?
No, never.
What have you done, Ryan?
Well, I've done plenty of research. I mean, I don't have my own form of transportation unless you count the bus. So it's a lot of independent research, you know, going online. I've done so many hours on Career Builder to no avail, you know, made phone calls, and also spoken to people who I know in the field. I have an uncle who is a doctor in New York, and I've spoken to him, and not only in how did he get to where he is, but into what advice he could give me as far as steps to take.
Are you personally open to relocating?
Yeah, absolutely, but it would have to be somewhere that isn't so different, like radically different. I was born and raised in Miami, so this is what I know.
So Nebraska, maybe. Yeah.
Right, Nebraska might
and
be
I just read where three of the best job markets are in North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska.
See?
Wow. I mean, I guess if you got to do what you got to do, right? So.
Yeah, ultimately. Now the future, the trend. We talked a little bit earlier. Where do you see? What's your outlook to your clients out there? You think it's getting better, or have we weathered the storm, or is still more to come?
It really depends on the industry, but I do think we're taking baby steps in the right direction. And there are jobs out there. It's just how you market yourself for them.
I agree. And in addition to what Shawnee was saying about, you know, tweaking those resumes, getting them as good as they can be, and the cover letters, I usually tell people to go the extra step, and when you do finally get an interview, because that's the step after the resume, is to write a thank you note after you've interviewed.
Very important.
We tell people to also write a handwritten thank you note, because no one does anymore. So that you have to do whatever you can to distinguish yourself.
Yeah, we tell our
so
students
you want
that
to
too.
stand out. If they get 100 resumes, how are they going to remember Ryan? So we usually tell people, you know, take a business card into the interview and exchange it with the people there, so you know how to contact them. You just have to go that extra mile, and you know, it's like fishing. Like after a while, you know, something's going to strike, hopefully.
Well, are there certain things within the interview process that you immediately say is a no-no? I mean, what types of things are you hearing that employers don't like immediately?
The very, very first question is usually, tell me about yourself. That's usually the make or break question, because if you can't talk about yourself and express yourself in a confident manner, how are you going to talk about our company or talk about our product, perhaps? So that question, being able to talk about yourself and then tell me about yourself, not where you're born and what your mom and dad do, but essentially having that down pat is a good way to continue forward.
If I may go back to something you said, you asked Dr. Hop, he asked you, Shawnee, that if you think we're making steps towards, you know, improving the economic situation, and I agree with you, we are taking baby steps, but are these the steps we need to be taking at this time? With 27 million people or more, I mean, roughly more, unemployed currently in the country, don't you think that the steps we should be taking should be like large, either local, state, or federal investments into the jobs that will attract the new skilled workers, the engineering, the medicine, technology, green energy, and not only will it attract these workers, but also benefit for next generations. You know,
yeah, I think that's self-evident. I mean, nothing you said I disagree with. You know, we only have about a minute left. Laurie, I wanted to get your feedback, and what do you see as the outlook next 5 years? You think it's going to get better? Put you on the spot there.
In certain industries.
Certain industries, and
probably.
I guess the industries that IT still seems to be where it's at.
And wherever you're living, I think you need to look at which industries are thriving there. In South Florida, there are certain industries that are related to tourism, and also in Central Florida. But you know, look at the industries. Healthcare is very strong here. There's a lot of elderly people, and that's always going to be a strong industry. So, you know, you want to try to look at where the jobs are that you would fit into.
Yeah, sometimes it gets down just to common sense. I mean, who is hiring, and what do I need to do to get into that, to be selected? Well, this is an interesting topic, and my hope is that next time we meet, Ryan will be employed gainfully.
I promise you.
And I want to thank each of you. Ryan, hopefully you got some great tips today, and you'll keep us posted.
I will be utilizing these tips, guaranteed. Exactly,
you'll keep us posted and let us know how you do. So thanks again. We'll see you next time, and thanks for joining us.